and welcome. My name is Dario Betti. I am going to be talking today with you. And as a matter of fact, maybe I should even start showing my video as well. Hello, welcome everybody to this briefing from MEF on the A2P Business Messaging 2020, our survey that we just published this week. So we got some results fresh for you for discussing. As always, consider this an open discussion, and as such, you're very welcome to ask questions at any point. I know that some people are just joining. I can see already quite a few of you online, so thank you for joining. And so many of you already last week were on our meeting talking about and looking at the different issues that we found and opportunity that we found with mobile and the smartphones in general. So very glad that we continuing our discussions. And I think we have, sorry, I was trying to show you in my full face, my full screen, and I'm starting to realize that it takes too much for me to manage our screen. And you will see me looking at all the different screens that I have and losing myself. Right now, I'm in a small box in front of you, and at the very bottom of the presentations as well. But let's not wait too long. I think it's 2 minutes past the hour. So I think it's probably the right time to start the discussion and to look at some of the details itself about the A2P Business Messaging 2020. Before doing that, I'll refer back to the actual report itself. So as you know, that's where you're going to find all the information, and the meaty, the juices and stuff, it's in there. Now, today we will be looking at the executive summary, which, by the way, if you're not a member of MEF, you can download the executive summary anyway. So we want to make sure that the message reaches as broadly as possible. So go there, it's free, download it. And if you are a member, you have access to the full report, the 50-odd pages, as well as all of the raw data, which is very valuable. You can find even much more information in cross-reference than itself. So that's about the report. But I should also say a few words about MEF, in case you don't know us. MEF is the not-for-profit global trade body. We've been around for 20 years. We represent much, apologies for that, you represent much of the industry across not just enterprise communications, but also content, advertising, identity, and the list goes on. So please come and see us, come into our website, and look at the insight we provide, like today, the interaction, the events, the networking, as well as the different initiatives that we do in the industry and for the industry. So that's about us, that's about MEF, and about me, Dario Betti. As I said, I'm the CEO, so double pleasure if you haven't met before. But as I said, I wanted to discuss some of the results. If you are crunch for time, and if you want to leave us now, do it, but first have a look. These are very high-level executive summary messages, and in a few 20 seconds, read on the left what it says, but on the right as well, the very big messages. The first is a confirmation that A2P messaging is a mass market reach, and I should say, stressing that it's a fantastic reach that we had in our hands with this tool, and it really competes with the mass media out there. So I think sometimes we do not appreciate how important is A2P messaging, and we hope that this research will kind of help us to give a bit more vigor when we speak about it. But interestingly, I say it is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, channels out there for communications, but at the same time, A2P has got an untapped potential. It could do much more. And that's the real surprising bit. In my case, I saw a lot of things where it shows that with a bit more focus, maybe the industry could actually squeeze a lot more of success out of this tool. Not everything is perfect. You will see that there are some challenges in there. I will glitz over it, but users are concerned about fraud, about spam, and definitely all these things that if you've been with us at MEF, you probably would have heard that as well. We're not forgetting that. And maybe something else which is worthwhile remembering, there's a lot of discussion about SMS and OTT. SMS currently is still leading the pack in A2P messaging. The dynamics are very interesting. We'll discuss about that as well. But for the time being, I think we have a lot of things to discuss and to say. I will every now and then you will see me going around. I'll try and check what messages we have. I think Sam is helping us, giving us a link to the website in case you haven't downloaded. But do please send message and questions at any point. Now, well, let's start with the report itself. And I did talk about reach, so we should probably start talking about the power of A2P and the reach of A2P itself. So first, I know that not all of you might be member of MEF maybe, or professionals in the A2P industry. So here is a bit of a summary slide of what we're talking about. If you're wondering what is A2P and why I'm here, you probably know SMS. Why not? That is a text messaging, and it started all with P2P, person-to-person messaging. Well, that was back the earlier 2000s and the success of it. Soon, text alerts came out, and text alerts are nothing but A2P. This is an application to a person, so a business sending messages to a large number of users, and for different ways to talk about information and customer services, to providing services to them as well. Well, comes the end of the 2000s, beginning of 2010s, etc. We had applications and messaging applications which were loaded on top of the telco services, on top of SMS. You could go to your app store, download WhatsApp, maybe WeChat, Viber, etc. And those applications have now grown into a proper delivery channels, not just for P2P messages again, but for the A2P business messaging we're talking about. Not today, but soon, MEF will release another paper. And we talk about A2Ps today, but P2A is for tomorrow. And in case you're wondering what P2A is where people actually talk to applications, talk to machines, and then talk to chatbots and interesting things of AI and machine learning, and making sure that you can actually deliver what we define conversational commerce, buying and selling and actually using services through a conversation with most probably an automatic agent of some sort. And the future, well, you'll tell me all about it. We're still waiting for the future. There's some ideas out there, but you probably should have more discussions and more reports. Today, as I said, we talk about the A2P message first. And again, we talked about the reach. So let's put the reach of A2P in context. When I say that there is a lot that can be delivered today about A2P, from A2P. Well, let's put it in context, as I said, and let's start making sure that the word adult population is there. Yes, there are 7.7 billion people living in this earth in 2020, and about a quarter of them are between 0 and 14 years old. So that leaves 5.7 billion people, and these are the adults, so economic agents, people that can buy things or can have a saying about stuff, etc. And that's also legal in some countries. You're only allowed to reach them. You cannot talk through business to minors. So that's an important factor to talk about A2P when people, whether you're a brand, whether you are communication service providers, you know who, worldwide we're talking to. And similarly, we could do this for each country if you're interested. But the next step is mobile users. Again, here, if you listen to how many SIM cards there are more SIM cards than people in the world. And that doesn't help us to understand how many people, users, as in a human, have got a mobile in their hands. So the numbers where we have worked with the industry to come up with, it's 4.6 billion, is a lot more than we expected. Remember, there's double SIMs, people with multiple SIMs, company phones, again, double SIM, machine to machine, IoT. There's a lot of SIMs in the world, and not all of them have got one single user behind. And so that's why it actually, from 8 billion, we got to 4.6. Now, take it to the next level. How many SMS users are there? And that's 3 billion. That 3 billion, again, that number changed a lot. Recently, we have seen the number diminishing as the usability of SMS for person-to-person communication, as we know, has been challenged by OTT and other platforms. People are preferring the WeChat conversation rather than, or WhatsApp communication, rather than just sending a simple SMS. With these, they can send pictures and files, and it's sometimes easier. Now, how many of those are targeted for A2P, SMS A2P? And the number is 2,168. No, very precise it seems, but the 2 billion and 100 really counts for 38% of the world adult population. Again, that is a big number, and that's where we wanted to go to. And you can see that it's really proportionate to things. Some people would like big numbers, but the big number doesn't mean anything if you don't talk about users. And when you talk about 2 billion users have been receiving A2P messages, that seems something about the industry. It's a real part of the economy. It makes a real difference. And as I say, the world population is a very big target out there, but 38%. It challenges the reach of other mass media as well. So well done to the simple A2P and definitely to the SMS. Now, A2P business messaging then and the room of growth. Well, let's go into the next level. So until now, we talked about mobile users. Apologies, I think I have one question tonight. Then in that case, let me see what it is. And so my multitasking seems to be failing again across the two screens. We go. And okay. So I'll go on the different screen. The number of SMS users at 3 billion is lower than the number reported by GSMA. Why? Which is correct. It's 4 billion. I believe that on this one, the number of SMS users, ours is 3 billion people, and I think both numbers are correct. I believe there's a questions of using different definitions. What a diplomatic way of saying everybody is correct, but really it is. I believe. So SMS users is how many people are behind the phones, if you want. But sometimes if you count how many user agents, and user agents could be SIMs sometimes, or could be a different element. Sometimes the browser is a user agent, but that is a slightly bigger number. So maybe if you refer to how many phones are using or etc., then you would get a bigger number than these. Between the two of them, I think there is a nice match if you consider how many SMS. Also, something I haven't said before, so thanks for your question. Our definition of active user, this is not just a user, it's an active user. But an active user, you need to be more than what it says there. It says receiving or sending a message. It's actually receiving and reading or sending a message in a month. So these are monthly active users. The yearly active user, for instance, is much higher. The SMS yearly active user for us would be 3.3, 3.4 billion. So you can see that the numbers take it a different snapshot at a different time. And this is for 2020, the lower number that we've seen the decrease. And this is about users, it's not SIMs, etc. So I hope that cleared up a bit. And all of these numbers were based on the business messaging survey and the other surveys as well. So I hope it makes some of the numbers appearing a bit more. We have another questions. Let me see. Can you give examples of an active user who cannot receive an SMS as all devices have SMS? Perfect. Thanks, John, for the question. So what we're talking about, it's an active user. There is an enabled device, and so all devices can receive an SMS. Now, but if you receive an SMS into your inbox and you never read it, then things don't apply to you, because it's probably sitting and collecting a digital dust or something. So what we want to make sure is that some of those users do receive and read or send actively a message. Now that's the difference between a enabled user, so a user that in theory could send a message, and a user that actually really does some of it. So when we use our questions and we ask to our users, we actually check how many of them are actually doing something and receiving and reading or sending. One of the examples is an IoT SIM cards could receive lots of messages, but then there is no message behind it as well. No person behind it. That would be the other part of the definitions. So I hope that helps. So first is a SIM could always receive a message with the right device. So questions there. However, what we're looking at is specifically people, no machines, and within the people, the one that can receive and act on it. And within that, A2P targeted the one that receive messages specifically from businesses. That is a mouthful for you, but I hope you're still here. And I hope I've answered your question, John, as well. And so back to the next slide and showing what the next level would be when we're looking specifically at the smartphone users, which is sometimes a preferred tool because of the connotation of a smartphone user. I'll tell you, look and listen to download the report on who a smartphone user is. It's not always the rich user, but it's a good way to benchmark the industry. And here, so we're talking about smartphone users, and here 73% of them do receive messages from business, the automated messages we were talking about. So there is a quarter, which is part of a potential, there's a quarter of them, 27%, that don't receive any messages. It is true, some of them do not want to receive messages, which is fair enough. And we have different questions in the surveys. You will see that probably 15-16% seems to be there's part of it that does not want to be alerted and be using the phone in that way. But there is an equal, almost 20% of them that might be more open to be discussing, engagement through an SMS or a different OTT message. The questions that are also interesting is what type of users, whatever messages these users get. Here we see promotional messages. This is your text alerts informing about a service and asking about, effectively advertising the potential of buying something. Customer services messages instead are the one that are relevant to your credit cards, but might be used. So a message that is saying your credit card has been used for this purchase. Is that okay? Or a delivery service that confirms a slot available, or similarly, a one-time password. So a lot of services that are part of a customer journey that actually alerts and is part of an overall delivery of the service. So 32% of those. Now, what surprised me is that these type of customer services are now higher, they don't reach more. So you could expect they're all pretty equal. You could expect to be bigger, especially, as I say, customer services, which is in the digitalization process, so much more could be done with A2P. So there is another opportunity of growth in there. And in terms of spam, you have 30% of received spam. So as I mentioned before, there are some challenges in spam. And I see that we have a question, so I should probably move quick about it. And I found it. Now, in the questions that if I can read, I'll try. Talking about spam, actually, spam is many things to different people. What is the 30%? Fraud or user unwanted? Very good pointing out that when we ask, this is a user survey again, so we ask for user and we get the answer that the user and the terminology that the user understands. So by spam, we at MEF refer to the unsolicited messages. So as part of a request to be contacted by a company. If you haven't done so, there should be spam. So if you just send a message without approval. But sometimes in language speak, spam is also messages were originally wanted or signed up for, but they turned out to be too frequent or not relevant. So I think there's an interesting question between that to understand what is spam. Is this 30% the bad spam of unsolicited we're talking about or not? More work to be done. However, we still take it probably with a bit of caution with number, but it does tell a story, but needs to understand a bit more. And we will see later in terms of attitudes, the importance of spam. So here we go. So please do challenge my multitasking and do send messages, and I'll try to use the different screen somehow creatively, but we will get there. But back at something important to say, you will see we have a lot of details between the different countries and what they show. And here it is in terms of the types of usage of those customer service message and those promotional information. Which countries are leading in terms of penetration, and which countries are a little bit lower end. And here is a story about the developing economies, if you want. The economies that are growing fast, being China, Brazil, and South Africa, really owning the spot for the one with a higher service utilization. So look at China for customer service message or A2P, that's a 43%. Or look at South Africa for promotional messages at 45%. So this is some of the countries that are really pushing the boundary in terms of usage and growing out there. Interestingly, they're equal in terms of the top three, and equally equal the countries that are at the bottom three. So if you look at the laggards in terms of A2P usage, Japan might be there with a 21% for customer service messages and 16% for promotional information. Now, it's interesting to say that there are cultural reasons sometimes in that. So what is acceptable in certain culture? Privacy could be equally an important one. How much information you want to share? Probably Germany could equally be one of those cases for being so low. Surprised myself, and I will wait for your comments maybe, to see the UK at the lowest, one of the lowest part of its chart of its 10 countries that we monitor on a regular basis, and USA so quickly, so they're so close. There seems to be another side of looking at it. There's a great potential in some of the Western world and some of the Northern America as well, and Japan, to do more with it. Obviously, that needs to understand and manage some of the different locality and cultural issues as well. And I see we have one more question, and so I need to read it again. Why is China a developing economy? Very good point. That China is a developing economy for us in terms of it grows fast. As a matter of fact, it's more than developing as it developed. I think it has been, as of this year, it should be the largest GDP country in the world. So that probably means something. It's not just developing fast, but has developed a lot. And it's intrinsically different maybe from Brazil, South Africa, India. So I think that's a fair point. Apologies for not using maybe the most correct terminology, but it was nice to contrapose, if you want, China, Brazil, and South Africa versus North America and Western Europe, where sometimes, Western European view would have said that they're the most developed mobile markets in the world. And then it turns out that at least China probably would steal the rank, and there's a lot more development of work and A2P and development in some other countries as well. Okay, so nice questions as well. Thank you. And if you want to suggest, we would love to use a better terminology as well. Now, so much was said about the potential and the actual achievements of the A2P that we wanted to compare it with one more great channel of communication with customers, which is voice, which is phone calls, which is call centers, if you want as well. And so we've asked users what is their favorite way of communication with different companies. And for us, it was a surprise, in fact, that they're quite balanced, very balanced. If you want, messaging might have just a minor preferences, 34% versus 33%. I would say that is quite common. The fact that messaging stands, hand-to-hand with the call center, for many, this is quite a reaffirmation of what I've been saying for a long time. 10 years ago, that would have been considered a complete, ludicrous claim to say the call center would be the same as an SMS message. Look at it in terms of preference as well as in terms of numbers. A2P has grown quite a lot. Interesting to see, though, this preference, how does it play, and if there is a correlation between how much you use a mobile phone, and specifically in this case, smartphones, and how many services you use. You might not be too surprised, but the more services you use, the more digital literate you become, the more likely is that you actually prefer messaging over other services as well. So that's at 36% versus 33% on these that are not below average. So a bit more of traditional users still there, but I think specifically in these digital savvy users, the preference for messaging is starting to be not just marginal, but a bit more significant. And I get no questions here, so I'll run into the next one. A2P messaging and perception still, and say, well, again, can something improve in A2P? That you say not everything is a good story in A2P. There are some areas that, like many things, need to be improved. And I think here a question of trust, or trust in data safety and privacy, at least, does come out. So if you look at people that put privacy as very high, and they really want to feel that their own information is kept separate and private, well, that makes a big difference in the acceptance of messaging versus phone call. To the surprise of many, maybe phone call you might not be seen as a particularly private experience. And the reality is that data within a company, whether it's via an SMS or a call center, is probably still treated in the same way in most cases. But there you go. If privacy is not important, you're pretty happy to use messaging via a mobile device. But once privacy becomes important, you do, well, prefer a lot more to actually to talk to somebody, to make a phone call. And that's also equal if you think that your data is kept safe or not. If you're concerned about data being hacked and used, you're more likely to want to speak with somebody on a phone call, on a call center, than sending messages via an SMS or an OTT services. There are some interesting learnings that I say, and that's one more of the things that could be done to improve. It seems that A2P has got a bit of an image problem, and it could have been from multiple reasons in terms of the way it treats data, the way it has treated data, privacy, and so on. And I think in terms of making those additional jumps and additional potential and growth, these are some of the things that probably need to looked at, and there's a bit more professionalization, and also talking about impressions in the end to the users, that things are done properly from A2P as well. It's not just a simple shortcut for something else. So maybe that's one area for food for thought for us. And then we'll go to talk about one of the key topics for many. Look at the title, we're talking about SMS and OTT. It's not a versus, it's not a competition sometimes. Well, obviously there will be. We think that the industry already has fragmented into many messaging platforms, and not just SMS, and within the OTT as well. And that, the reality of a business is consumers will be jumping from one to another, have got their preferences, and the industry is to pick the right one, as to highlight where the right customers are at the right time or for the right occasions. So how do we understand about SMS versus OTT? And once again, OTT is our messaging applications where. Well, when we ask users, where do they receive careful business messages from businesses here? And then the response was SMS is still leading. So the SMS inbox per se, that's the main area, 44%. Combinations of SMS and OTT, another 27%. So the reach of SMS business messaging will be 71% of their smartphones, the other operating for the one that uses. And the other side, for the one that do receive messages, you've got 56% for reach somehow by an OTT message. Interesting, in OTT message, in some markets like WeChat, you could say that the market has existed for a while. In others, probably WhatsApp, there was the business service, the business element was more only recently launched. I guess it would have been still applied to a lot of cases, as a lot of messages still from business where it was happening, even if not allowed in terms and condition by WhatsApp, some of that was still happening nevertheless. So I think within the countries, you can see there were some differences. However, there's a lot of traffic being reported, happening, received by users on WhatsApp countries as well. And unless you've got questions, I apologize. There's many more slides, interesting topics to talk about in the report, but I thought it would be nice to use numbers, and which is only a minor part of that, which is our MEF market data analysis. So based on what we've learned, here it is. This is historical data. As always, we have a very good relationship with Juniper Analysis, with Mobile Square, and they are our main source of information in terms of forecast and data. So we're not trying to steal that thunder via the experts. But when we put together some of those high-level numbers, which is only the word numbers and so on, we wanted to play back with you the results from the analysis itself. So, and here is when we looked at SMS, and we confirm the expectation that SMS is really a very big platform. The 3 billion we've seen before of active users, interestingly, has got a minus 1.5 year on year. So as people are moving away from active usage of SMS, we're probably using more OTT channels, etc. But business messaging, the one that have been targeted from business messaging, there are 2.1, 2.2 billion. So that's a large number, as we were saying. Another way of looking at it is how many out of a total have been targeted, which is 71% again in total. And then that shows a bit of potential again for the total market of SMS on many more customers out there that could be used, could be reached and served as a business messaging target. But one of the questions we got is how fast OTT is growing, and the answer is pretty fast. The number of OTT, for the same reasons, can be inflated a bit. If you put all the OTT claim, as we've done, just like the SIM, it turns out that there are about 8 to 9 billion mobile active users of OTT platforms, which is quite astonishing given that internet is available for 4 billion people. Again, so there's a lot of double counting. Even within them, a lot of cleaning has been done. Everybody likes to show big numbers. Definitions are different. And so we try to look and spend some time cleaning some of that as well, and try to compare what the people were telling from the surveys on what we're really doing in the end. So here we go. Result is OTT is huge. And there's no way around it. Maybe not as big as the original numbers published by companies might look like, but 2.4, 2.5 billion is a big platform which can be harnessed today. Interestingly, less utilization than SMS. So if you're looking at more potential, definitely OTT has got a lot of potentials. Different OTT platforms are letting business doing different things, different levels. I think there is a bit of ring fencing and trying to avoid introducing spam to their platform as well, some of them. So, but nevertheless, definitely is a potential, higher potential to grow fair, and the numbers keep on growing year on year. SMS is still far higher, but if you look at them at one point, things might change. Email is an interesting position here, and so again, monthly active users in January 2020, based on our evaluations. And the number is 1.6 billion. It was a surprise for me to see a number. I expected higher. Then if we looked, which is, you see, there's probably a note of there as well. But if you compare the quarterly number of a yearly number, is much, much higher. The yearly active user for email is about 3.7 billion. So what we are saying is email is a great platform. We know so many things is happening around email, so much is changing in the business work. There is a report from MEF about that, so please download and see. Even a business messaging platforms are now central and overtaking email. But so we've seen a reduction of multiple aspects, but the overall number of users that might use it for receiving information, for a confirmation of a flight, or for buying something and receiving an email. There's a lot of that, but they don't use it every day. They don't use it sometimes every week. There is 50% of the user that actually would use it every month, and about less than 50, and another 50% that would actually use it once every 2 months, 3 months, or 6 months. So that's the reason why you see such a low number here. But interesting, if you are a company and you want to send a message, a business message, knowing that it will be read in 9 months doesn't probably really, rock the boat. So as an A2P platform, we have to recognize that the email is having challenges here, and that number has dropped a lot and significantly. And once again, these are not email accounts. There are billions of emails accounts out there. These are email people that actually would read email. And if you're a business, me and you probably are reading email every day, but a lot of people out there are not doing that anymore. They can use applications, they can use messaging or OTT as well. So I think SMS, that was the main message. Still the largest communication channel, to my surprise, larger than email. But it wouldn't be complete without talking about other multimedia potential within the SMS family. So we wanted to include RCS and MMS. MMS has seen a bit of a resurgence in terms of A2P traffic. In terms of a person-to-person utilization, it's pretty low, or diminishing. And nevertheless, there's been a very faithful number of users for MMS that are not giving up. They are still using their phones for MMS, pictures messaging, if you remember. So here we go. Not going to refresh review about SMS. RCS, for some people, RCS is taking so long and it's becoming a bit impatient. I think there is a very good story within RCS, within these numbers themselves. Again, we'll go back over numbers because I think some of you might already spotted there some difference between what we're reporting and others. But RCS already with 188 million active users, monthly active users in January, that would be the equivalent of the 5th largest messaging applications in the world, according to our numbers, which is quite a lot to say. So Snapchat is bigger than RCS. And that, if you look at the valuation of RCS and of Snapchat and how excited the business are to do business with Snapchat, then you have to say that RCS has got something to say because it's very, very close in there. The year-on-year growth in monthly active users is superb, 61%. The number of A2P targeted users are 30 million, and please do help us to understand how much it is close to reality, the numbers of what people report to, but is actually only 16%. So there is a story that says until now there's a lot was to be said about the rollout from operators. 88 of them, I think, have done so now. But now you could equally say that there's a lot of space for A2P campaigns that have not been utilized in these areas as well. So I think RCS is not a negative story. It is a positive story, which is slower in the making, but nevertheless, slow as it was, is now positioned as one of the key, opportunity for reaching customers out there, and seems to be growing still. So we will see if these numbers get better and improved over the period and to the next year. But as I said, as RCS, in some countries, we've been told that also by some of our members, as sometimes it's difficult to sell RCS where it's not available across all operators, etc. But the brands respond and say, I do want the multimedia element, not just an SMS campaign. How could I do it? And that's why MMS have seen, despite its continuous year-on-year decline, a higher uptake for sending messages for A2P. And about 89 million there of A2P target monthly user, which is surprised. That seems much higher than I expected. And but back to you. If you have questions, if you have comments on what you see in the market. I see there is one more question. I think, sorry, that was a question that we answered again. So I will not reply to this one. And no more questions, but if you have, you're very welcome to ask more, as I do realize we only have a few more minutes left of your precious time as well. So, but questions take priority. I will just want to show a few more things as we are here. And more, look at the demographics. There's a lot of information in the reports about demographic percents, but makes an interesting read on who does what. But at a high level, younger users are the ones that are less targeted by A2P SMS. That could be economic reason as well. If you are 16 to 24, you might have less services you are somehow entitled or interested in. But that also goes back to the overall preference you might have in terms of OTT and affiliations in OTT services, as you've seen there. So if you are 45 plus, however, SMS is definitely the way to go, similarly 35 to 44, and then it goes to slightly lower. But more information, including additional demographic information with lots of data, is available in the reports. I will now just leave you on one interesting perspective, if you want, and nothing more than a perspective. I don't want to say that this would be scientifically proven, but we've checked when our users reply of whether use SMS inbox or messaging apps to receive messages, and in this case, what devices we're using. There seems to be a nice correlation list between certain device brands. We've seen it in smartphones research as well, like whether it's Asus, Xiaomi, and Oppo, for instance, which is within certain areas, particularly the younger groups and particularly some of the demographics of some of developing economies as well. They've seen an almost parity between messaging app and SMS inbox. On the other side, whether it's Sony, also particularly strong in Japan, or LG, which has got a very different affiliations, a lot of lower usage of services on LG phones for our research. So they're not particularly digital literate, at least most do, and they seem probably the one with the lowest penetration of OTT application for messaging. And more questions, let me know. I still kind of look at up and down, but you can reach me. I want to, and I did say before, just touch briefly on trust, because that's the other side of what's happening. There's a lot of positive in all things we've been saying until now, I believe so. But there's also, a question of text messages phishing, and 25% have replied that these threats is happening to them. Somebody has tried to steal data to them, and that's quite concerning, higher than we expected. Look at the different type of data-related harm that might affect to them in a mobile phone, and it still sometimes it happens to themselves, or it happens to somebody close to them. But the numbers and the threats are there, and people are seen to reflect that in their relationship. We've seen before, privacy and data. So when we asked them, are you concerned about the level of fraudulent messages in general? That's particularly relevant for A2P messages. 28% replied, I am very concerned. And if you add, I'm very concerned to I'm moderately concerned, there you go, 60%. 64% of the market replying that they are concerned about fraud, they are concerned about messages. The more the medium, the channel remains overall clean, the more likely that people will trust and read and embrace it. Obviously, the more issues there are, the more concerns, and there'll be more attrition that's going to be in the market. It takes a long time. There's lots of attritions everywhere, mobile advertising as we track it, or payments, but the more we can make these a clearer and transparent environment, the better it might be for the overall business opportunity. So with that, I think I have covered the main areas, and I'd like to ask you, thanks by the way for asking questions throughout the event. So I really like that. And so if you want to keep on, you can call my message. You can call me and email me through our MEF usual events as well. You can ask our questions. In terms of the study itself, which I hope you have downloaded by now, again, there is a smartphone study carried by on-device research, and those are the 10 markets looking at the smartphone users. On top of that, the additional research we've done all throughout the year. So I think you will find both of them included in this report. For our members, you can download the full report, so please do that. And if you have comments, if you are not a member, you can download the summary. But as you are here, and you've been so nice to stay with us so long, let me just remind you of some of the other reports that might be of interest for you. On RCS specifically, we published the guide to RCS conversational commerce, and as well the new business messaging best practices 2.0. Both of them are you can download from our site. I've mentioned it multiple times, the 6 global smartphone user survey. I think will go very nicely across with this one if you want to expand and read more. And similarly, in terms of survey, if you want to go more deeper in trust, we have published the 6 annual global trust last May. Still interested, read. And I will say, sorry, it's a long list, but we have lots of reports. Why not? Securing A2P SMS business messaging. It's just been published 2 weeks ago. Has been receiving very well by the overall community. And so here we go. I believe that's done, and I think there are no more questions. In that case, it's only left to me to really thank you for your time and attention for today. It's been nice. Thanks for the questions, and you will find soon, in a couple of weeks, another report looking at the P2A and the people to application questions, and that will be published. And similarly, we're going to have another briefing like this for people to ask questions and see what they are. So please join us next time. Meanwhile, you can still access, if you missed or join later, the recording from next week of this briefing, and definitely go back and download the paper if you haven't done so. So thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.